Okay, guys, so carrying on with this work, then we've already looked at the idea over the previous weeks of animals and plants. Within the natural world, then there's three additional groups. There's protists, bacteria, and fungi. Okay, now we're going to look at each one of those in a little bit of detail, and then you're going to do a bit of investigating yourself. Protists then are microorganisms. So all of these groups are microorganisms. They're usually made up of just one cell. They usually live in water and stay in one place. They include things such as algae and amoeba. Okay, so algae we're quite familiar with, and that's something that lives in water. It's just the one cell, and they stay in one place. The idea of them fungi, and this is the idea of mushrooms, mold, and yeast. They absorb the nutrients, like we saw in that bread, like we saw in that lemon, from their surroundings, and they need those nutrients to survive. The third group then is bacteria, and these are the largest group of any kingdom by far, so larger than animals, larger than plants, larger than fungi, larger than protists, and they can be used in food production, okay, such as when we said about turning milk into yogurt, so thickening it, making it more viscous, and changing the taste of it slightly. They can also cause diseases, so bacteria are the elements that make us poorly quite a lot of the time, okay, and why we have to be careful about cleanliness and how we exhale and things like that. Okay, right. So your challenge today, guys, is to be microbiologists on your own. What you're going to do, if you can, and I know some of you might not be able to, whether you've not got any of these things at home or it's a bit tricky to do, or mum and dad don't really want you to, have a science experiment at home. What you're going to try and do is get some bread. Okay, I've got a loaf of bread. Now, when you're getting your bread, you might want to pick 4 slices, or you might want to pick 2 and cut each one in half just to save on the amount of bread that you're using. Okay, I'm going to pick 4. Actually, no, I'll pick 2 just to make the point. Now, I'm picking it from the same loaf because, as a scientist, we always need to make sure that we're only changing one variable. Now, if I had this from one loaf that was fresh today and another loaf, so another piece from a loaf that was less fresh, then I wouldn't be changing just one variable, I'd be changing 2. But right now you can see I've got my 2 slices of bread, 1, 2. And what I'm going to do with both those is a very strange thing, but I'm going to cut them in half using scissors. So they're both the same size. Sorry, all 4 are the same size, these pieces of bread now. I've now got 4 pieces of bread, 4 pieces of bread, okay? All the same size because, again, keeping one variable, only changing one variable. Then what I've got is some bags. Now, if you've got bags like this and you can write on them or stick something to them, that's great. So this is my control experiment. This is going to be my experiment where the bread gets wet. This is my experiment where the bread is warm, so I'm going to put it on the radiator. And then this is my experiment where the bread is cold, so I'll put that one in the fridge. And then I'm going to put each one of my pieces of bread, so one bread piece in each of my bags, okay? And what I've done then is I've setting up an investigation. So as a microbiologist, so an investigator of small microorganisms, I'm able to identify what enables them to flourish. I'm unfolding this mystery of mold. And you will see me later putting these in. I'm not going to go and film myself in the kitchen because that's my kitchen. I don't really need you to come and see my kitchen. But I will put these in different places. I'll send you some pictures of them as part of this later on, once I've set them all up in their different settings. And you will then see what happens to each one of them. What conditions then make the bread grow the mold the quickest? Okay, so by the end of next week's session, so in 7 days' time, I want to see which of my control, where it's got nothing apart from just being out and about in the kitchen, my wet one, where what I'm doing is I'm going to spray some water in. You can see me now spraying. I'm going to put bit more, and then I'm going to stop. And once I've sealed the bag, I'm leaving them all sealed for the whole week, so I don't want to change them. Okay, hopefully now you can see a little bit more. You should be able to see there's quite a lot of drops on the side of that bag. Then my warm one, which, as I say, I'm going to put on the radiator, and then finally I'm going to put my cold one. I think I'll put it in the fridge rather than the freezer. because I think the nature of frozen, we know is something delays deterioration, delays change. Okay, so I'm going to do my investigation, and then over the course of the week, I'm going to complete that. Now, if you're not able to do the investigation, that's a shame because it does just take 2 pieces of bread. But if you can, it'd be great for you to show me how your investigation is coming on over the course of the week. Now, somebody else who investigated like you guys did is another microbiologist, Joseph Lister. You will have remembered finding out about him when we looked at the medical advances in Victorian times. Now, his microbiology, so his work on microorganisms, started when he was a surgeon. He was 26 when he entered the College of Surgeons, and he became professor, so Scottish professor of surgery in Glasgow. He kept noticing that his surgeons, he was good at chopping them up, as it were, but they died quite quickly afterwards. And it was a similar time into Florence Nightingale and other people who observed that changes need to be made in the care of patients within hospitals and in healthcare settings. People used to think that there was this miasma, this air that caused illness. Okay, and obviously at the moment we're very aware that sometimes microorganisms can spread airily. However, he felt that infections could be spread in other ways. He did experiments and found that sometimes if things were cleaned, then the patients didn't get illness, whereas if they were not cleaned, the patients did get infection. Use this acid to clean the instruments, so the things that he was cutting and cleaning wounds with, and to clean the wounds, and that basically caused him to invent antiseptics. Because he invented antiseptics, the number of people who were getting infected dropped quickly, reduced really rapidly, and then that's because they were killed. That's because they were killed by this acid. For that, surgeons would do the surgery over here and do that on Hanya, and then surgery. Dr. Smith would then go over and do some surgery on Fatima, then go over and do some surgery on Imani, then go over and look at Axa Farouk's and do some surgery there, and never wash their hands. Not just the patients, not just general people, but the surgeons were not washing their hands, and therefore the disease was spreading and spreading. Now, Joseph Lister, if you notice, his name's Lister, and Listerine is something you still use to wash mouth and to clean as part of keeping clean and antiseptic. So his name lives on in terms of how people clean now. But Joseph Lister, really famous microbiologist then, who observed how things were being spread and observed that there were problems in terms of how things were being treated. What I'd like you to do is think about if you could go back in time. What would you tell people if you could go back 300 years, so before Joseph Lister? What would you tell people to do? What would you tell people they should do more of? Have a think. Okay. The piece of work then that I'd like you to do today, as well as the investigation that you're going to start, is to have a look at this sheet about microorganisms. It's a bit of a catch-all. You just write down the key things in the sections that show what you've learned about microorganisms. Remember, there's those 5 groups. So we've looked already at 2 of them. We looked at animals and plants, but there's 3 more: bacteria, fungi, and the other one that you've got to identify from your work today. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you've identified that. Just quickly looking back over those, just to double check you've got the 3 names correct. We've got protists, fungi, and bacteria. Sorry, I suddenly forgot protists, so I thought I should look for you. So protists, fungi, and bacteria. Protists, those ones that tend to be in water. Fungi, those ones that get the nutrients from their surroundings. And bacteria, those ones that can change the state of things, such as milk into cheese, but also can cause diseases. Okay, so there's good and bad bacteria, if we think about it. 2 things to do then: your investigation and your collection sheet, and I look forward to seeing those pieces of work. Now, the investigations won't conclude this week, but you can do that second sheet this week and send that through. I look forward to seeing those. I'd love to see some photos of you bread as well, guys. See you later. Bye.